we are united in direction and objective and purpose.
How long does that last, especially if Mark Carney decides to offer up a concession that adversely impacts the province as part of a deal with the U.S.?
I could be very precise, 27 days.
Mark Carney says Canada's premiers are united in direction, objective, and purpose when it comes to responding to the new tariff threats by Donald Trump. But their own public statements reveal sharply conflicting positions, and no matter which course Mark Carney chooses, that image of unity he is trying to project will disappear rapidly. And in the game of chess, where the mainstream media crowned Mark Carney champion before he ever sat down at the board, Mr. Carney may now have maneuvered himself into a checkmate. Let's take a look.
Our unity is our greatest strength, and our destiny is in our hands. In a moment when others would choose to divide, we choose to build. This is the Federation working as it should. This is why Canada is ready. We'll continue meeting, keep delivering until the job is done to build Canada strong. We all recognize that the most important thing we can do is to continue to build this economy strong and unite this economy. That's job one. That immediate benefits for Canadians, and that is what we can control. And the second is to be united with respect to our strategy, our negotiating strategy, and our objectives. And part of that unity is recognizing that there isn't a series of little trade issues, they're broad trade issues. All of them have to be part of a comprehensive agreement. And I would say, and premiers obviously speak for themselves, we are united in direction and objective and purpose and seriousness about the response. The core here is that you have a united front of First Ministers. We're all working in the same direction for Canadians.
Okay, so if you left that press conference, you would say, oh, okay, so everybody is in agreement on how to proceed when it comes to trade, how to proceed when it comes to strategy, and how to proceed when it comes to the general direction in how to respond to Donald Trump's latest tariff threats. Okay. Well, if only Mark Carney were telling the truth. He's made it a habit of just lying to Canadians whenever it feels convenient. Now, let's be fair. Is Mark Carney really going to come out and say, hi, everybody, so the premiers and I and the premiers and each other, nobody really agrees on the way to move forward, so we're screwed. So, no, I don't expect him to say that. I would expect him to say something like this. You have to say something like that. So I get it. I get what he's trying to do. The problem is that Mark Carney has maneuvered himself into this position. He is playing checkers. The U.S. is playing chess. Is it because the U.S. is more intelligent than Mark Carney and his liberals? That's up for debate. The position is we're playing by different rules. The U.S. has the largest economy in the world. If you flip them, you flip Mark Carney into the U.S. and Donald Trump as running Canada, and they were trying to take the same approaches, you would have very different results. Donald Trump wouldn't be in a good position if he were trying to take on himself when it came to the United States. Donald Trump is in a position where he can just say, this is happening, you have to deal with it. Canada can't do that. We can't, and that's the reality. So we have to play a different game. But Mark Carney says that all the premiers are united. Let's show you how they're actually not. So, ladies and gentlemen, here are the different positions by the premiers who are for retaliation, or they're at least open to it. So you have Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. He says everything's on the table. He wants a tariff-for-tariff response. He wants to use oil, potash, electricity, energy. He wants to shut off certain supplies to the United States. And from that, he's saying we're negotiating from a position of strength. David Eby, so he wants to look at critical minerals and the trade relationship there with the United States being cut off. He supports retaliation for tariffs, firm on the U.S. alcohol ban, doesn't want to touch that. And he says there is no middle road. Susan Holt of New Brunswick, Liberal Premier. Energy is a potential tool, so she's open to that. And, so they sell fuel to New England. Tools are at our disposal that we can use. We're ready if needed. So she's a little bit more cautious, but she says, I'm open to that. Wab Kinew, Manitoba, NDP Premier. Common opponent unites us, seeking federal plan details. So he wants to know what the Prime Minister is actually going to do. He wants a Team Can approach, and he's less specific on tools. So he hasn't really said either way what he's open to. Rob Lance, PEI, emphasized Team Canada. He hosted the meetings in Charlottetown, as you probably know, called for clear consultation, supports a comprehensive deal. So he wants to negotiate. He hasn't said that he isn't against tariffs, but he wants to get a deal done. And, others in terms of the territories, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, so they're publicly aligning on unity, obviously. They're less specific in their comments on energy and, leveraging debate. And they support federal negotiations. So they want to get a deal done as well, but they haven't been specific on the other parts. Now, here are the people that are on the other side of this. And other side meaning they are less cautious or more cautious to be imposing retaliatory measures. So Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, he rejects the potash energy leverage. He's bullish on a near-term deal. He's saying, let's get it done. Prefer negotiations, drop the rhetoric, so stop playing games and actually get to the table. Danielle Smith, unsurprising to people, she is completely against energy leverage. She says it's not going to happen, warns of Line 5 risk, diplomacy first, protect Alberta jobs. So she's saying it would be increasing the risk dramatically to the Canadian economy if you actually start retaliating with any significant position on the tariffs. Christine Frechette from Quebec. So she says she's not there on strong reprisals, questions aggressive tactics, prefers the discussion path and less vocal on tools. So these are all of the different positions of the different premiers. So already you see there are some strong voices on let's hit the U.S. and and then you have some on the other side saying we're absolutely not going to use energy or any reprisals against them. And this is where Mark Carney kind of finds himself. He's saying that there's unity on the direction. There absolutely is not unity on the direction. And I don't even think Mr. Carney has even talked about what he thinks he's going to do if and when these new tariffs end up coming into play. But here's CTV's Vashi Kapelis when she was asked on this. And thankfully, she's seeing this for what it really is.
Actually, the Prime Minister and the Premiers all trying to present a united front today in the face of Trump's threats. But how long does that last, especially if Mark Carney decides to offer up a concession that adversely impacts the province as part of a deal with the U.S.?
Exactly that question, Omar. If I had to put a timestamp on how long this unity lasts, I could be very precise, 27 days, because that is how long we have until we know whether the new tariffs that Donald Trump is threatening actually materialize. The Prime Minister indicated today he would not take retaliatory action until we know that they do materialize. And when he does take that retaliatory action, should it be necessary, that is where that unity falls apart, because the key piece of leverage that Canada has is most certainly its energy exports, oil, potash, electricity, and critical minerals. And there is not unanimity around the Premier's table about how far to go in limiting those exports, blocking them, adding additional taxes, should any of that be necessary. And in 27 days, it's going to be up to the Prime Minister about whether to pull the trigger on that, and he will face immense political pressure from different parts of this country and different premiers to do different things.
So, this is a trap that Mark Carney walked himself into. Now let's just address something. It's ridiculous for Donald Trump to just continue to throw tariffs at Canada. And yesterday, he decided to throw tariffs at 60 other nations out there, based on the premise of the labor laws. Well, he seems to be changing his excuse every single time that he wants to levy a tariff, and it actually gets challenged in court and reversed. So he's just doing this to try and get more capital into the American government, because remember, that's where all that money goes. It doesn't go into the American people's pockets, it goes into the American government's pockets. So when it comes down to this, we are completely against all of these matters or actions that Donald Trump is taking. It's stupid. It's stupid. But as Mark Carney says, and I'll quote him, we can only control what we can control. So one of the things that Mark Carney has to do, this is the only way out of this checkmate position, in my humble opinion, is to go and get a deal. But this is the problem, and this might be why Donald Trump threw these extra tariffs on Mark Carney, is to force him to actually come to the table to make a deal. Because as we heard from Ambassador Hoekstra, and as we've heard from the Mexican government, they want this done. And Canada doesn't seem interested in getting this done. Canada seems interested in not getting this done. So this may be a way of forcing Mark Carney to the table to actually get something done with the United States when it comes to the USMCA, CUSMA, whatever you want to call it, and getting something hammered out. Because this is just going to be a distraction for the American administration going forward. And he wants to get something done, most likely before the midterms. Getting a deal on the USMCA would do that. Now, when I talk about that, when I say get a deal in USMCA, there's already a deal, right? It's already in place. What they want to do is they want to modify that, and they want to get agreement from Canada and Mexico in order to modify that. They want to make it better for Americans. But Canada has some things to say and some things to do when it comes to that. Pierre Poilievre has actually talked about this. Okay, well, let's commit to building up a strategic mineral reserve, and we use that as a bargaining chip. We say, listen, let's build this up. We'll take American investment, and that way, whenever you need it during wartime or whatever, you get to actually pay almost rock bottom price to actually get those critical minerals, because we're going to be there as a strategic ally as we have been before. We talk about increasing the oil supply to American industry. We talk about different industry in Canada that we can finally get it out of the ground, get these minerals out of the ground, and use that as a bargaining chip in these negotiations. Mark Carney hasn't done any of that. And this is the concern. So, Mark Carney's position is essentially this. And Donald Trump put him there. Or you can argue that Mark Carney walked himself there. Or maybe a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. So what you have is Mark Carney was hailed by the mainstream media as the man who could take on Trump. He was even dubbed, and I'm not joking, the Trump Whisperer. Everybody remember that? And they essentially crowned him as world champion of international trade chess before he even sat down at the board. So he promised a deal by July of last year. Didn't happen. Promised a deal a couple days after that. Didn't happen. Promised it by the end of the summer. Didn't happen. And there was a agreement in principle that Mark Carney said that there was a framework of an agreement. And then there was a framework and agreement confirmed by Ambassador Hoekstra in October. Then all of a sudden, Canada walked away from that. So since then, Mark Carney has made flippant remarks. Who cares? The Davos speech, whatever. And all he's done is allowed the Canadian premiers and his administration to make the Americans, whom you're trying to negotiate with, more and more irritated, which means more and more tariffs are slapped on us. Now, it seems like Donald Trump has said, I've had enough. Here you go. You better get your butt to the table so we can actually come up with a deal and talk this out. So Mark Carney has not negotiated and conduct himself into a position of strength, the Canadian economy is being hurt more and more and more each day. Over 60,000 manufacturing jobs have left this country in the past year and a bit, and they're not coming back, folks. And all of these different industries are closing. 40% of manufacturing companies are set to leave or are thinking about leaving. And he wants everyone to believe that we're in a stronger position now than we were 18 months ago. So now he's in a position where he has 27 days. And at the end of that 27 days, he either takes retaliatory tariffs, which is going to tick off a bunch of premiers. He's going to not take retaliatory or do retaliatory tariffs or any punitive action, which is going to tick off a bunch of premiers. He can get a bad deal with Donald Trump, which is going to make him look like a complete fool, or he can get a good deal for Canada, which is the least likely of all of this, folks, because he's not in a position of strength. Now, you can blame Donald Trump all you want for putting these tariffs on, and we blame him. We absolutely do. But as we keep saying, this relationship is not just Donald Trump. This relationship is Donald Trump and Mark Carney. And one of the primary responsibilities of a Canadian Prime Minister, any Canadian Prime Minister, is you wake up in the morning trying to ensure that you have a positive, productive relationship with our strategic ally to the south. Not our strategic partner that is in East Asia, aka China. So Mark Carney could have had a deal last October, could have had a deal before that, could have had a deal after that, but this is where he finds himself in. He may be used to thinking he's top dog in the boardroom and pushing around $1 trillion worth of investments in different companies around the world at Brookfield. But make no mistake, the reality on the world stage is Canada is not that. Especially after 10 years of the Liberals, and especially after a year and a half of Mark Carney.